Thank you very much indeed. That's a nice big introduction. Thank you. As I say, I'm from VocalEyes, and I will be talking a little bit about what VocalEyes does to open up the arts to blind and partially sighted people through audio description. But I thought before I bang on about VocalEyes, I would just generally talk about audio description, because some of you may know about audio description, some of you may not. And some people may know about it on television and cinema and DVDs. What is audio description? Well, audio description is really verbal commentary, some people might call it, of what is happening, for example, on the television, on the screen, so describing what's happening on the show, what the actors are doing, etc. So it's giving a verbal commentary of what the visual elements of a TV show is, or a film, or at the theatre, a theatre performance. People may be aware of AD, audio description, on television. Most of the mainstream television broadcasters like the BBC, Channel 4, Sky, etc., have audio description, and about 20% of their output is audio described. The RNIB has been doing sterling work with others to try and get that up to 20% and also increase that so there's more audio description available on TV. If you want to receive AD, audio description on TV, you will need a digital television, a free sat box, or get your television via satellite or cable. Also, some of the online replay players like the BBC iPlayer does have description. You can use a tab to filter to get the description on the iPlayer as well. In the cinema, most blockbuster films, so most films that are on at your local cinema, have audio description. That's available, and you shouldn't have any problem at all trying to get it. Sometimes some of the cinemas say, oh, we don't have it, but they do have it. And most DVDs nowadays will have audio description as well. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky to find that audio description because it's one of those menu things that you have to use some buttons on the video remote or the DVD remote to actually get the right menu to click the audio description on. So you might need some assistance from a sighted member of the family to do that, which is a real shame because they should make it very easy to find. And there's a website where you can find out lots more about audio described cinema and DVDs called yourlocalcinema.com, fairly easy one, which obviously lists all the cinema audio described showings. And also, obviously, as I would say, audio description is also available in museums, galleries, heritage sites, and at the theatre. And this is where VocalEyes really comes into play. And VocalEyes is a national charity providing access to the arts, as I said earlier on. We've been going for just over 14 years. We celebrated our 10th anniversary by setting the Guinness World Record for the largest number of blind and partially sighted people attending a musical theatre performance with, I think it was 168 blind and partially sighted people. We sadly only had 7 guide dogs. We ran 7 touch tours prior to the performance, and it was a great success and a great achievement for VocalEyes. We normally audio describe about 100 performances a year at various theatres around the country. So that's obviously lots of theatres here in the West End of London and off the West End, but also many touring shows. And that can be drama, it can be comedy, it can be musicals. We audio describe ballet. We audio describe contemporary dance, and as I say, we also work within the visual arts with museums, galleries, and heritage sites. So, how does it work in the theatre? Well, we have a bank of about 20 freelance audio describers. They go and see the show at the beginning of its run. They spend a lot of time writing their audio description script, which they're going to perform or present live during the audio described performance. The reason I say they is that we normally have 2 describers working on each show for the editing process, and also most shows are fairly long. If it's a Shakespearean play, normally in two acts or 3 acts. So one describer will describe the first half of the show, and the other describer will describe the second half of the show. And they spend a lot of time writing their audio description script. They're looking at the show, they go and see it, they get a DVD which they work from, and they're working out what visual elements of that performance need to be described to give somebody who's blind or partially sighted as good an experience as their sighted friends and family, but also how they can fit that description in between the dialogue of what the actors are saying. So they work incredibly hard, and it is a skill, it is a technique, and it's a profession. They do need to get paid because they do work incredibly hard. So how do you find out about audio described performances? Well, our VocalEyes performances are listed on our fully accessible website if people have access to the internet. We also produce a newsletter in Braille, large print on audio CD, which goes out 3 times a year, and there are copies on our VocalEyes exhibition stand outside the corner if people don't receive it. We also send out email alerts listing upcoming audio described performances. So if people have access to emails, they can find out up-to-date information. So it lists the audio described performances. It gives you details of the date and time, ticket price, the box office number, time of the touch tour, everything else. And you book through the theatre's box office number. We don't organise or look after the ticketing, sales, or anything like that, because it's a theatre's audio described performance. Although we're providing it, it's a theatre that's providing the show, and it's their tickets. So you would call the box office number that's listed in our newsletter and on our website. You would either speak to the box office member of staff. The theatre might have an access line as a dedicated person to talk to when booking your tickets. And they should ask you a series of questions about whether you're a guide dog owner, whether you're coming with a sighted companion, how many headsets you might need to listen to the audio description, whether you're coming to a touch tour or not. And they should take all that information down and make sure that they're meeting your requirements when you go to the theatre. Most theatres will have some form of concessionary ticket rate. So most times you're getting a really good price, sometimes half price, sometimes a third of the price, and most of the time that reduced rate is also available for a sighted companion. So it's great. So you can take a family friend to the theatre, 2 tickets for the price of 1. And then when you've booked your ticket, in the post prior to the audio described performance, we send out an introductory audio CD. Audio information is also available from our website as an MP3 download for those who have access and able to download audio files. But the audio introductory CD is giving introductory information about the show. It's obviously telling you the date and time, making sure that you know when it's happening. It's telling you which describers are going to be describing it. But it also gives description of the set, description of the characters, a short synopsis of what the show is all about. And the wonderful thing is that you have that information in advance, so you can listen to that information as many times as you like to get yourself familiar with the show, how it looks, what the characters are like. And for me, I form an image in my mind of what the show is like from those audio introductory notes. So then we come to the day of the audio described performance itself. And on the day of the audio-described performance, normally about an hour or an hour and a half prior to curtain up, prior to the start of the show, we will organise with the theatre a touch tour of the set. You get the opportunity to go up onto the stage, explore the space, be able to handle and touch props, pick them up, feel what they feel like, walk around the set, get an idea of the space that the actors are performing in. And we will arrange, most of the time, to have some of the cast come down to the touch tour. Sometimes we get the whole of the cast, sometimes we may only get a couple of members of the cast. And that's great because you have the opportunity to talk to the actor about their role, but it also to get an idea of what that character might sound like, so the voice of that character that the actor's playing. And it's wonderful. For me, I find that going on a touch tour, to a certain extent, it might sound a weird thing to say, is colouring in that image I've got of the show from the introductory notes. And after the touch tour, it's normally about, as I say, the touch tour lasts about half an hour, so you've normally got about half an hour to 3/4 of an hour before the show starts, so time to go to the bar, have a drink, time to meet up with friends, have a chat, everything else. And about 15 minutes before curtain up, before the start of the show, we will rebroadcast an edited version of the introductory notes. This is for a number of reasons, mainly to accommodate any changes that have been made to the show from the time the describer saw it to the time of the audio-described performance. This might be that an actor's broken his leg and an understudy's playing them. It could be that something's changed with the costume or something like that. And also, it's an opportunity to ensure that the headset that you're listening to the audio description is working and there aren't any problems with it. And it's also a good reminder to remind you what the show is all, how it looks and what it's all about. Our describers are, obviously, as I say, they've seen the show, they've written their audio description script, and they perform that live. They perform it live during the performance because theatre is live. And because some people say, is it not recorded? And it can't be recorded because theatre is live, things happen on stage, the describer's got to react to them. So they're normally sat in a soundproof area of the theatre. That could be at the back of the theatre, it could be in a dressing room or under the stage, and they're working from a monitor, a video feed of the stage. And they have their script and they're delivering their description live. They have a microphone, like me here, they have a microphone, they're talking into a microphone. That then gets transmitted through a system at the theatre, either an infrared or radio system, and you pick that up on your lightweight headset and listen to it during the show. And the describers, as I said before, they're describing all the sort of physical elements of the show. And that could be something very sort of big and bold as to a fight scene or something like that, or maybe if it's in a fast and somebody drops a tea tray or something like that. So it can be the very physical things, but it can also be the very subtle things, how a character might react to what another character is saying. And that's really important to get a better understanding of the show and a better understanding of that character. So it can be the big things and it can be the very subtle things. So you listen through a lightweight headset, as I said, and so you're listening to the description through it, and it's brilliant, it's absolutely fantastic. And one of what I really get from going to an audio-described performance is having the opportunity to share that experience with my sighted friends and family, and to be able to participate in the arts, to be able to go to the theatre, to be able to go to a museum or gallery, to be able to really sort of engage with the arts. My wife is fully sighted, and the first show we went to was Phantom of the Opera. I wasn't a great fan of Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I wasn't a great musical fan either, but I have been slightly converted. And it was really wonderful. I don't know if anyone's been to see Phantom, but at the beginning, the chandelier comes to life, and it's sort of it's covered in a cloth on the stage, and then suddenly it comes to life, it moves up into the roof of the auditorium, it expands, it lights up. And Sarah, my wife, was sort of nudging me and saying, "Oh, the chandelier's coming to life, wow, it's doing all it." And I just sort of nudged her back and said, "Yes, I know, it's being described, I know what's going on." And the great thing about it is that, you know, I can share that experience with her. I can go and see a show, we can talk about it. You know, sometimes I feel a little bit more informed than she is. But you know, we can both enjoy it. And that's really the beauty about it. And, you know, it's not just stuff here in London. We work with touring theatres around the country. We work on a regular basis describing Opera North's touring productions. They've got a production of Janacek's The Necropolis Case, which premiered at the Edinburgh Festival, and that's touring around the country. That's going to places like Leeds, Nottingham, Newcastle, the Lowry in Salford. We also work with the National Theatre. When the National Theatre take their productions on tour, we normally get commissioned to do the description for that. And the wonderful production that's One Man, Two Governors, which some people may have seen in the West End, that's touring around the country this autumn with a comedian called Rufus Hound, who's taking the place of James Corden as the lead role. It's a very funny play. I've seen it twice, and it's going to places like Newcastle. It's going over to the Grand Opera House in Belfast. It's going into Venue Cymru in Wales. So there's lots of description all around the country. And just to sort of come back a little bit to talk about museums, galleries, and heritage sites. We work with a number of museums and galleries in two ways. We will either train staff, volunteers, wardens, etc., curators at a museum and gallery in audio description, also, you know, visual awareness and guiding techniques, so that they are able to take a blind or partially sighted person around their exhibition, around their museum, and be able to describe that to them. We also work providing recorded audio descriptions, so we will go in and write and record an audio described guide that somebody can either download from a website, pick up on a handheld device, and go around a gallery or museum. We worked with the Imperial War Museum on their Lord Ashcroft gallery, which showcases the Victoria Cross and the George Crosses. And that was a recorded guide. And sadly, we produced it and it was fantastic. But the Imperial War Museum decided to change things around a little bit. So we've had to go back, do a bit of rewriting, a bit of reorientation as well. And we're in the process of updating that. And that's a shame, but, you know, they didn't foresee that, and it's a bit of extra cost for them to get that to be done. So the actual training staff in museum and galleries is much better because you're empowering those people at the museum and gallery to be able to take you around. And we've done lots of work with places like the Wellcome Collection, Norfolk Museums and Archaeology Service, various people around the country. And just one more thing to mention. This year has been, you know, a big year for London with the Paralympics and the Olympics and the Diamond Jubilee and everything else. And to celebrate the 2012, we decided to sort of not quite take something that somebody else had already done, but there was a project called New York Beyond Sight, which won an award a few years ago. And it was sort of New Yorkers describing particular buildings in New York. And we decided that we would do something similar for this year. So we have on our website, on a separate page of our website, London be on site, which surprisingly enough is key Londoners talking about London landmarks. And they've worked with our describers on the description of the landmark, but it's their connection with that landmark, their personal story, their relationship with that landmark. For example, we have the wonderful Barbara Windsor talking about the Theatre Royal Stratford East and how Stratford East was really the first place that she started her musical career with Things Ain't What They Used to Be many, many years ago. And it's a wonderful story that she tells about meeting Joan Littlewood when she thought she was the cleaner at the stage door. And we've had people like Tony Robinson. His landmark was the pillar box at the end of his road, because that sort of signposted his area of London and talked about the history of the pillar box as well. And we've had people like Zoe Wanamaker talking about the Bush House where the World Service used to be, and the actress Alison Steadman talking about St James's Park and the Pelicans. Lots and lots of stuff. We have about, we're going to get it up to 40 landmarks by key Londoners on the website. We have probably about 25, 27 up there at the moment, and we should get to 40 by the end of the year. Before I open up the floor for questions, I just wanted to, for those of you who may have heard me talk before, you probably have heard this quote, but I'm going to give it again. There's a lady who suffers from macular degeneration, and she started suffering from it in her early 80s. And it's a lady called Barbara, who was a keen arts opera buff, loved going to theatres and the opera when she could see. And she, when she lost her sight, or started to lose her sight, thought that she wouldn't be able to go again. And thankfully, her social worker, I know they're quite rare, went to see her, knew about audio description, told Barbara about it. Barbara was a little bit scathing about it, said, oh no, it can't be the same as when I could see. And she went to an audio described performance, and she virtually goes to every audio described performance she can. And she describes it like this. Here's a quote. She says that when she lost her sight, she thought theatre and the arts would be barred for her for the rest of her life. But when she found audio description, she describes it as an oasis in the middle of the desert, because now she's found audio description, theatre and the arts have come to life again for her.